for truth.
Welcome to Duality Check, the podcast where two brothers embark on a journey through the realms of scientific inquiry, the mysteries of the past, and the uncharted frontiers of spirituality. Join us as we explore the wonders of our world and beyond, all while embracing the roles of curious bystanders rather than experts. Together, we'll unravel the tapestry of existence, blending the dichotomies of knowledge and wonder. Get ready to question, ponder, and delve into the dualities that shape our understanding of reality on Duality Check. I'm Drew.
And I'm Dean, and welcome to episode 59.
All right.
Drew and I were just catching up. There's been so many videos.
A lot of interviews that are dropping. A lot of podcasters
interviews
hitting up a lot of these UFO whistleblowers and Chris Bledsoe. There was some drama over his family and some other supporters of Chris Bledsoe started like posting on X and all these other
trying
platforms.
To pressure him to release
basically
an episode
saying that
he
they
had recorded with Sean Ryan last year.
They're stating that he was suppressing their episode, or at least people were coming to the conclusion that he was being suppressed for some reason.
Right, that was the accusation.
That was basically the accusation.
Yeah.
Anyway, he finally posted and he writes as the episode title, I think it is
like Chris Bledsoe, the episode I never suppressed.
Yeah. Which is good.
I like that.
But I'm a little over an hour into it, and it's a lot of it just the story we all know.
And then right away, I
will say the detail he gives on the river encounter is a little bit more fleshed out, I feel like, in the beginning, which is nice because he kind of gives a little bit more detail as to like the way they're oriented and how things are kind of laid out. So you get a little bit more detail and like spatial awareness of how things kind of, at least in my mind, after hearing it a few times now, this was probably one of his best ways of like describing it, which kind of clicked for me, excuse me. So that was good.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet. I've just seen a clip on Twitter where he was kind of fleshing out in a little more detail the sort of prophecy with the lady for next year.
Yeah.
He seems to be, he was even calling out like the next year date now too, because he's probably had people come to him and say, well, according to what you're saying, that
Easter 2026, right? Is the prediction, the prophecy.
And he was saying something like because all I remember from before is he was saying like we would be given knowledge or whatever.
Right.
But he went into a little more detail about them like making themselves revealed to us and like the type of knowledge. I think he went into a little more.
What type of knowledge? Or maybe we should both listen to it for a week. We'll put together a podcast about
that's on my list. And then Sean Ryan drops two other UFO ones. Yeah. So he has one with Lou, and then he just dropped one with Diana Pasulka too, which I haven't seen any of those yet.
Yeah, so we're going to have to get into a lot of those too eventually. Maybe we'll do all three of those all together on a podcast.
Yeah. And then our man Greg left us a comment on the website. Thank you for using the website. I feel like it gets no love.
He must have heard us in the episode. He heard that you wanted the people to get on the website.
Well, he dropped us a link to a video, so maybe that's...
I mean, you could do that on
Can
YouTube.
you do links on YouTube?
Yeah,
I think so.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for doing it.
At least in a private message, I believe you can.
Yeah. He writes, though, he said, I just stumbled upon Dr. Courtney Brown, who's leading Farsight Project. They gather remote viewers to make contact with ET. Here's a very intriguing interview with Dr. Brown, and I thought that you might check this out, as it's surely worth to talk about in one of your podcasts at some point. Best regards. And so I did pull that up, and I actually went through it today. I don't know what to read off him exactly.
I do. His whole tone and vibe, man, he just seems like a mortician. I told Dean just before we stepped in here to record.
I was like, dang it, I should have asked you that on the podcast, because
you'll all get what if we play any of this. You'll get what I'm saying here.
That's funny. So apparently he's like a PhD. I think he works in like math, or I forget exactly what field he says. But
I think he said he's a mathematics professor.
Yeah, he doesn't pursue UFOs as part of his academic career.
Right.
He has
It's a side hustle.
Yeah, the remote viewing and UFO stuff is on the side. But he is pretty organized. Like he's got this whole, what was it called? Farsight project website, and he's got this like Farsight project. Farsight. So pretty.
That's old school internet stuff right there. Fartsight.com. It's just a bunch of farts for you to log in.
The website's pretty interesting. He's got like how-to. It's .org. He's got like how-to stuff on here. He's got an interesting way of like filming people who do remote viewing and them like drawing out what they're seeing and stuff.
Yeah, it's like an after-school program.
Yeah, I haven't really dug into these yet. I want to dig into these some more. All I can say is my impression just based off the podcast is like he's one of these people that's just all in and unapologetic about it, and he doesn't stop to like cite his like sources as he's just
mid-talk,
like laying like bombshell after bombshell after bombshell. So it's a lot of like, at least it comes off at first impression to me as like a lot of assertions without backup, but it's just an interview. So like,
true.
That's not necessarily
it's not like his
the format you need to like have your
information.
receipts on necessarily,
Right.
but he doesn't really stop to like say like why or how he knows this or that. But essentially, he's saying that like his organization has developed their own spin on the remote viewing process that they picked up from, you know, the military's process.
Another, and where Stephen Greer got his CE5.
So Stephen Greer's got CE5, and then you've got
now Jake Barber with his.
You got Jake Barber. You get the one that's been around for a long time, the Monroe Institute. What's their process called?
I don't know the process.
Hemisync or whatever. Yeah.
That's a good name.
And then you've got like the actual military training. And anyway, so he's got his own spin on the remote viewing stuff.
Okay.
And he says he and his people, they do like essentially board meetings with these entities.
Is that right?
Who like influence him on like how to make his, you know, like what he should be doing. And so they told him like what to call it, how to set up his website, what cameras to buy. Like they're like insisting to like he says his basic story is there's like the good and the bad ETs, and that the good ones are trying to make themselves known.
Yeah.
And so they're ready for like people to, you know, they want like clear footage of stuff. So he like films UFOs, he films these remote viewing sessions and like tries to make it like very visually pleasing. He's got like a whole like video streaming service for all the stuff they produce.
Wow.
Wow. Anyway, so
that's cool.
Yeah, I get a little bit of pause just because of how like enthusiastic and
sure.
And then I also get a little bit of pause when someone's like clearly monetizing it. And so like it is definitely a promotion for his stuff. I'm not sure how much they charge for things, but they definitely have some like on this education one, it's got like a remote viewing 101 lesson on YouTube here. Whole hour-and-a-half video that's supposed to teach remote viewing. So
that's
I'll
awesome.
have to check that out.
If I get bored and
yeah,
I can definitely just start remote viewing one night if it only takes an hour and a half to watch a YouTube video. And you know it.
But he says like he has a whole lore for like what has been going on with the ETs, that there's basically been this war between them that in the last, you know, however long has been like more of a Cold War. It's not hot anymore, but they like battle for influence on our planet the same way we battle for influence with like Russia and China
and other countries and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that some of them have our best intentions kind of at heart, and other ones are more aggressive and not necessarily care about human well-being. So he calls them the good ones and the bad ones. But yeah, his story is pretty interesting. I just want to look more into his like remote viewing stuff, and he's got a book there. I'm gonna see if I can get my hands on. So
yeah, I definitely have to dive more into this guy.
Yeah, I'm holding like my breath with him a little bit, but I'm interested. He's like giving a lot of real details.
How many books does he have? Just the one, or how many?
Just the one I saw.
The War in Heaven.
Yeah.
Planetary battle that really happened. True story of our solar system is scary.
He's got like videos on how to reliably record videos of UAP. He's given details on some of that stuff too. Like he said that what he had to do is get a certain type of camera that could do 120 frames per second in order to like catch the movement details. And then he takes it to like a camera, like a servicing shop to have the IR and ultraviolet filters removed, because there's in every camera, they have filters in there to block out IR and ultraviolet, just for like in general, a cleaner shot. But he says you need to remove those things in order to get like good images of UFOs in the sky.
Okay.
So that's interesting.
Something you can do at home, sort of?
Yeah, if you know how to modify a camera that way.
Or you know where a shop is that knows how to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe there's an iFixit video. I mean, this is the book. Remote Viewing by Courtney Brown. The Science and Theory of Non-Physical Perception. Anyway, interesting stuff. I'll link to it.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. This is the kind of stuff we're looking for, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah. No, thanks for sending us down that direction.
Yeah.
What do you think of him since you came across him? Do you have a similar impression, or like, I do find the sort of lore about like the sort of war between them. He had an interesting explanation. I love the lore for UFO
they
crashes
all have little
too.
bits of truth in them, I bet.
Yeah.
They're all so similar.
He had
all of these stories of the beginnings or the ends, or these wars in heaven, and these,
Yeah.
They all have a similar tone and a similar like message at the end,
Right. He's got this interesting explanation for why there are crashes. He's like, because if you think about it, this is his whole shtick. Like, if you think about it, if you can build a craft that can travel across the galaxy, like, how much sense does it make that they like forgot to get a part at Pet Boys and they break down on some distant planet and crash, right? Like, the odds aren't super high.
Right.
That's the case. So he says that essentially what's happening is because of this like Cold War situation, and the quote unquote bad ones are in contact with the government. They're like making deals with the government. They have this whole like technology transfer agreement, probably in return for like abductions and stuff like that.
And
like
maybe some sort of controlled disclosure.
Yeah. Anyway, he says because of the Cold War, they won't, like, the different sides won't shoot each other's craft down, but they essentially got the government to, like the U.S. government to, because they're not a party to that Cold War, right?
At least not openly, yeah.
Yeah, so them doing the shots, and like the good aliens that are being shot down don't want to like fire back, and so they're like not really protecting themselves in order to like preserve the peace.
Right.
And that's why we get these donations or whatever, which I found
interesting
interesting because it clicked in with the Jake Barber stuff pretty interestingly. Like, it explains why there would be this like presence inside this craft that he's picking up.
Yeah.
The sadness that he was talking about too.
It just seems too human. Not that these things.
It does, right?
It seems a little bit too human. I'm just imagining, even if they're not completely different than us, like I heard Joe Rogan make I don't know if that it was Joe Rogan who made this point. Anyway, I listened to a video recently and they said basically that maybe it was Jake Barber. Anyway, now I lost my train of thought. Basically that the craft they're basically from here, and they're not extraterrestrial, but they're from here. So it just makes it less likely. I forget where I was originally trying to take this point, but
yeah. Well, about the whole speculation about the source of the crashes and stuff. Is what I was talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm still not going to get it yet.
Okay.
Anyway, let's move on.
There's been some other really interesting interviews too. Dan from Debunking got a Danny Jones episode and a Joe Rogan episode.
Oh, really?
And then Jimmy Corseti from
Right
Right Insight, he was on Danny Jones with Dan.
That's right. That's where I saw him.
So those guys are getting some shine, which is cool. Not necessarily a ton of new stuff coming out of that.
Yeah. I would love the whole ancient mystery and the UFO thing to like come full circle somehow.
Yeah. Well, it seems
ancient aliens.
Right. I get it, because people who dive into one of these topics, like they become immersed in their topic and able to support their topic, and they're already stepping out on a ledge to try and argue for their topic. So
to muddy the water would be,
if you connect it with other things that are also not well supported or like are
highly controversial,
that are controversial, like having that attachment would make people less likely to believe you in the narrow focus of the ancient past or UFOs, respectively, right? So you try and stick to your lane. But yeah, no, I think we need more of a synthesis of those things.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we get to a point too where we get AI to sift through all the data and make objective like inferences on the data instead of having humans do it.
Right.
Because I feel like there are biases that we are, like the AI, and it, like we are saying, like give it the instruction to find the most likely scenario using these data points.
We're probably not far away. I'm sure there already is some like applications of AI in these fields, but we're probably not far away from AI being a lot more competent to do stuff like that,
especially objectively, because we know increasingly that humans are not perfect, obviously. But that, our hubris's and our egos get attached to an idea. And at the highest level, it's dangerous because the people who are counting on that information is everybody.
Yeah.
To make up their minds.
It's interesting. What else? Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that came out. There's a bunch of new UFO documentaries as well. I don't have those like on a list in front of me.
Did you watch the new
James Fox has a documentary, like a movie style. And
the program?
There's something on Apple Plus, and there's something on MGM also. I don't have the names for them all. But
yeah. We'll link them though.
Yeah. I'll look them up and link them. So tons of video links in the description. So that'll keep you guys busy on UFO and ancient history topics.
And we need to get some more viewers or something up in YouTube so I can start popping links up as the video goes. Because they lock it.
Yeah, we'll get enough views
until you monetize, I think.
Cool. All right. Well, shall we do our weekly Bashar? What did you bring this week?
Yeah. Let me make sure I got the right one in here.
This is the one, yeah?
Yeah. It's kind of lackluster. Couldn't really find one this week.
Okay. Well,
I went through a bunch.
Let's check it out.
Almost 30 years ago, you and I discussed the moon.
The moon, yes.
And long before anyone else, some people were speaking of it being hollow, of course, but you said that there are alien bases.
There are
all
bases,
sorts of stuff.
yes.
But most importantly, you said that the moon had been moved into place.
Yes.
Not an original celestial body around our planet.
No, an original celestial body. I didn't say it wasn't that. I said it was moved into place.
Okay. And you explained why.
Yes.
As far as the balance side of it.
Yes.
Moon at night, sun during the day.
But also balance gravitational.
Right, also. I was going to mention that.
Yes.
But there were other reasons that you weren't able to mention, or who moved it into place, or what planet, or where it came from. I was hoping that maybe now, after 30 years,
where
you could
what
elaborate.
came from.
where the moon came from.
I told you it's a natural body in your system split off from the Earth. It's just that it was moved into a particular orbit artificially.
Okay, so it wasn't moved from a different location outside of Earth, from like another planet or...
No.
Okay.
It is split off from Earth.
Okay.
After a large impact happened long ago that broke the Earth in two.
Some almost 30 years ago, you and I discussed the moon.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I would have liked to hear Bashar originally talk about that and just give like
just give his breakdown instead of the grilling nature of that.
Right. But
Yeah,
he still answered a few questions there
Yeah.
about the nature of it.
That's interesting.
The idea that it was split and it was part of the system, but it wasn't in the correct place, and it was moved there at some point in our deep history. Is what he's making it sound like. It was moved into a place where it balanced gravitationally with the Earth and the sun, and the orientation of things.
I mean, it being where it is has the effect on our tides that it does.
Mm-hmm.
Like the further away it goes, the less of an effect it'll have.
Which provides for the foundations of life, land life, and all these things.
Dude, can you imagine if the moon was way further back and we just didn't have tides? That would be... I wonder how much different the ocean would behave. I mean, obviously the tides wouldn't happen, but like I wonder, would the waves be the same?
Well, if the moon wasn't there, they actually attribute the moon and the tides for creating the tide pools that would eventually become life, land life. Like when things would be stranded.
So maybe that's like
landlocked.
Maybe that's like step one to like essentially gardening on a fresh planet.
Right. Yeah, you move something into place to create the balance it needs to make the water move in such a way to spark the mutations in a sense. Like we have the code written, but the code you have to have certain things in alignment for the code to be released, otherwise it won't be released.
Interesting.
Pretty cool idea.
Heck yeah. And then he shared this photo of a... Is this a Catan table? Or this is this is Space Catan.
Yeah, that's Starfarers.
Yeah. You ever played that?
I haven't. I want to. I want to show you. So there's two things. I want to show you the cool ass table they have to play on, with cup holders and little trays.
Drew and I are Catan nerds. I have a 3D printed Catan set that I did.
Yeah.
Like took me months to get it all printed. I never 100% completed it. And I want to get custom cards printed that match my 3D print colors. So it's easier for new people to like,
sync
everything makes more sense.
That's a good point.
Anyway, I love Catan. So you have a table too?
The table that it's sitting on, this play table that they have, this gaming table. They have like custom like little trays around it and cup holders for drinks and stuff. So
that
you have
is
like
a cool table.
It looks like you have like a snack tray and a game like tray. Like one you could put your pieces in, one you could put your snack in or something. And
this
then you have a
cool
cup
thing
holder
to have, and then host game nights.
Yeah, they have like a big wall full of game boards over there.
Nice.
I just thought this was cool. Plus the Catan Starfarers. I want to try that someday.
I would too. All right, and then here's a video we've been sitting on for a couple weeks, and we'll link this too to add to your list of videos to watch if you all are interested in following up. This is multi-subreddit AMA with Leslie Kane, Dr. Gary Nolan, Dr. Hal Puthoff, and Dr. Jim Segala. And it's pretty good. I thought it was super fascinating. Basically, each person gets like their own moment of like questions being focused on them. And then there's a little bit of back and forth, but it's kind of segmented by like the person. Anyway.
The host,
Yeah, so you marked off this section. Let's check this out.
So pilots and others who encounter UAPs often state that their abrupt high-speed maneuvers appear to be way beyond our physics. Is that a reasonable conclusion?
You know, when you hear that, that sounds very reasonable. I mean, after all, you've got pilots observing these craft coming from space, dropping down to the Earth within a few seconds, and then stopping on a dime. and then suddenly taking off at high Mach numbers and doing a right angle turn. So it's very reasonable. As it's a natural thing for these pilots to say, this is just way beyond our physics. On the other hand, I approached it as a scientist in a different way, and I said, okay, if something is happening, it's got to somehow be part of our physics. So what I did was I took a piece of paper and I made a list on the left-hand side. What were the bizarre things that were being observed? Right angle turns at Mach 10, diving into the water with no splashes, all the weird, walking up to a craft that seemed small, but they got inside and it was giant, things that, now for me, the more weird those descriptions, the better I like them. Because if somebody is just making up a story, they want it to sound kind of rational and reasonable. Well, my list of weird descriptions were not rational or reasonable. They're all off the wall. I then took general relativity and said, okay, in all of our ordinary electromagnetic applications with computers and Wi-Fi and so on, we start out with a series of Maxwell's equations and outcome all the predictions, and we do our technology developments. In general relativity, Einstein's theory of general relativity, now that's used primarily for investigating astrophysical phenomena like mergers of black holes and neutron stars and so on. So I said to myself, suppose we could engineer Einstein's equations for general relativity the way we engineer Maxwell's equations for all of our electromagnetic effects. What would I expect to see? And so I made up a list on the right-hand side of the piece of paper, and they matched hand in glove with the weird observations being given on the left-hand side. Let me give you an example. For example, let's say, okay, you've got this thing going at right angle turns at Mach 10. If anybody were in there, they'd be turned into tomato sauce in the back of the ship. But anyway, when I apply the equations for general relativity affects time and space variables. So it turns out that one of the consequences in this case is that time runs faster inside the craft when it's engineered the way I'm proposing. And so for them, they're just taking a leisurely turn. Of course, when they look outside and see all of us on the ground, we all seem to be going in slow motion. But anyway, what appears to be an absolute, unbelievably right-hand turn at Mach 10, for the people on the craft, that's not the case. Similarly, in reports of people approaching a craft, which is some particular size, and then when they get really close, the craft seems either much larger or much smaller. These are the kinds of things that general relativity would predict. Another example would be time running at different rates, so that if somebody supposedly has been taken aboard a craft and they're in there for a while and they come out and they find time has gone by much faster outside or at a different clip, and they think, well, maybe I've got missing time or whatever. Anyway, you go down this list of weird things, but they do match up with general relativity. Okay, so if we physicists know how it's working on the principle of general relativity, then, why aren't we building them? Why aren't they aircraft? Well, it turns out that the one requirement that is a real challenge is you have to have enormous amounts of energy collected in very tiny volumes, extreme energy densities, and we can't do that. That's where we fall short. So I would say the physics is straightforward. It is within the physics that we know, but it's way beyond what we can do with our engineering.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a perfect explanation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, we just take in the fact that, like, he's saying that he's using the general relativity and using it the way they use the Maxwell equation, and he's predicting what the outcome of that would be, and it's lining up with a lot of the phenomenon, which is basically the time and matter are affected differently when using whatever materials they're using and energy they're using to create such speed.
Right. So, like, if you're an engineer,
speed, yeah.
you're going to, like, set up a design for something and you're going to put in those, like, variables from the design you're coming up with into these equations and solve for them. So, like, if I make something this or this size with this dimensions and these electrical properties, run them through the equations and that'll tell you, like, how you need to build it exactly and, like, what are the requirements.
Right.
So, like, if we can do that same thing with space-time where, you know, with relativity, where we were like, okay, we want to make a craft that can travel to the next galaxy in a, you know, couple hours. Well, or at least to another star in a couple hours. Well, if you're going to do that, then you have to be able to go at relativistic speeds. To go at relativistic speeds, you need to be able to have even massive amounts of energy, right? And so, like, if that's actually an option for you with your civilization because of your energy production capabilities, then you can continue on with that engineering problem. But in our case, if
we're stuck there, yeah,
we're like, well, that's unrealistic. We can't do that.
Yeah. It made me think of what the alien from our last episode, the interview in the beginning, he said that he was talking about how he came here, and he said that he was from Earth, but from a different time. He came here to Earth,
right.
And he basically was saying that, like, to move in space is to move in time. And when you're moving at those relativistic speeds and you're able to move at the speed of light, like we had talked about too, everything is in motion, right? So knowing Earth's coordinates within the universe is not about finding Earth in the present. It's about finding Earth where it was in time, you know, going back in time by going to the place it was. And if that's, I guess that would be that time is circular instead of linear. That would be,
it's interesting.
It would have to
be more
circular,
because we can't produce the energy densities. We can't test.
We can't. Yeah.
If you could push beyond the speed of light, we think the equations
backwards?
say that, like, you would go up to infinite mass relativistically, and so you could never hit the speed of light. But it may be the case that when we actually experiment with it, we may find something different. So if it is the case that there is some way to then break that speed of light barrier, then you are now traveling in time. And which is interesting because think about it, like, if you're going to go to a star a few light years over, you know, if you go at relativistic speeds, like just like say 95% the speed of light, like a bunch of time is going to pass back home if you travel at that speed.
Tons.
If you travel at the speed of light, it should essentially, like, eons will go by basically. But if you pass that, then in theory you would be turning time backwards. So you could almost use that and choose your speed in order to control, like, when you arrive back home. If you have that ability.
So if you're able to go faster than, like, because if we move 95%, as long as we're moving away from the object of origin, like, we're relativistically, their time is going to be faster. So then when you return, it's going to be in the future.
Right.
Even though for you, it's only been a few years.
Do you remember, have you ever seen the old, like, 80s sci-fi movie? It's like a kid's sci-fi movie, Flight of the Navigator.
I think I have, but I don't remember any of it.
It's such a good movie. So I forget, like, the whole premise, but this kid, like, I forget, like, how, but he gets somehow aboard this, like, spacecraft, and he's, like, hanging out with these aliens and, like, traveling in space. And then he comes home and, like, decades have passed and they think, like, he just went missing as a child and everyone in his family was sad and stuff. And so they, like, took back off and, like, went super fast and traveled back in time and dropped him off the same night he was picked up. Which was, it's interesting, like, that kind of thing you could do. Like, you could travel somewhere, travel back, but then, like, control your speeds in order to choose when you arrive back.
Yeah. So fascinating.
Yeah, I find the like physics and like technical aspects of space travel super fascinating.
Yeah.
Or like UFO tech style space travel.
Yeah.
I mean, normal space travel is interesting too, but like, let's be honest. Like being able to go at those speeds versus like having one of these like sci-fi generation ships where like you're in hibernation for 30 years while your craft goes somewhere. You know, that's it would be cooler to be able to control the time by going fast enough.
It will be interesting. Like the idea of going to the future doesn't really solve any of our existential.
Well,
going to the future just to see, but then you still wouldn't be able to come back, like as far as what we know now.
Right. If that's
so, it wouldn't really help in the sense of like, okay, you're just sending people to the future, but we have no information still. So
right. I mean, in theory,
it's being able to figure out how to go backwards in time,
right?
Or being able to get the energy densities that we need to be able to create the craft that can go the speeds that we want to, like he's describing here.
All right, here's the next snippet you took out.
Two of us from the program, Dr. Eric Davis and myself, we were flown to the Pentagon. We got to read the original reports and so on. And so it was really an astonishing report. There was no proof of isotopes that would be from an extraterrestrial location. So the idea that maybe we could prove it was ET because of isotope formation, that didn't pan out. But nonetheless, they had to agree that the putting together of these kinds of materials that you can never get to bond together hardly at microscopic levels was really quite unusual. In fact, separately, we had an aerospace corporation spend $1 million and mess up their equipment trying to bond these things together. So in the end, it's a mixed outcome. No proof that this came from an ET crash. It was supposed to be Roswell. But on the other hand, nothing that proved that it couldn't possibly be the case. So anyway, we're about to publish a long paper on the details we got.
That's really.
Do you remember what piece of material she's asking or he's talking about there?
Yeah, we might have to go back a few seconds, but he was basically talking about a report that the Pentagon had about some sort of extraterrestrial metal that was discovered, or is being brought forward as being from one of these crafts.
Is this the same stuff that Gary Nolan tested? I wonder.
I'm not sure. This one was directed to Hal, so I'm assuming it was something that because he had mentioned working with somebody else in the lab on it. Eric Davis was who he said.
Right, he said with Eric Davis.
Yeah. But still interesting because he talked about how like there was no evidence that it was extraterrestrial because these materials can be found here, and they had the same isotopes as we find here, or within the range of things we find in nature, or something that we can create.
That's something I'm pretty ignorant.
But the bonding,
about. I wonder,
bonding was an interesting point that he made there.
That we can't
bond those things in like
in that way.
A tech company with unlimited resources bought and broke a bunch of equipment trying to do it.
Right.
So it's it's still interesting. It's
still weird.
Still could be possibly a natural occurrence.
Right.
We don't know. We know lightning and plasma could do some crazy things to different elements. So, but either way, it's a fascinating material. There was just nothing conclusive, he was saying, to basically say that it is extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
Which we know now from asteroid Bennu that all the building blocks and organics and obviously all of the minerals and rocks are most likely just the same everywhere else. So like not the same configuration.
Chandra Vikramasinghe's book soon because I want to do a deeper dive on the like panspermia stuff. Yeah. And I want to be able to cite like what studies they did and like why he's so confident about his opinion. Anyway.
Okay.
Cool. Well, let's take our first break. We're a little over here, and then I think we're gonna do the final part of the Lacerta files.
Perfect.
All right. This is Stevie Nader. Oh, I decided to do something this time.
What's that?
Well, it just kind of happened as I was dragging songs in. But our intro song is is a piece of our soul food track called Mistaken, which is a sample from Stevie Nader's song Take You On. So I just happened to drag both of those songs into the file. So right now we're going to play Stevie's song, the acoustic version called Take You On. And then on the next break, I've got our soul food version, which is sampling that, which is our intro song, but I want to play the whole thing with like the lyrics and everything.
Okay, perfect. I'm down for that.
If you're interested in the before and after of our sampling method, there you go. So enjoy this. Stevie Nader, Take You On.
Send your name into the atmosphere. Slept for days, induced my utmost fear. Went around the world and ate a flag. We tried to raise the sun and dreamt out loud, unfurled a shaded past. Realigned to save the love. Dove inside the jewel-encrusted sea, 20,000 leagues below. Dozing eyes and dueling custody, send me out and leaves afloat. Induced my utmost fear, 'cause I mistook life for truth. Yeah, 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 I mistook life for truth.
Welcome back.
Yeah, that's a great song.
Yeah.
It's a good sample. It's a good sample.
By the way, that was featuring Angel Matutis. I'll try and find her stuff and
I think
link
we
it.
linked this in the previous one too, though.
Yeah. By the way, if you guys don't ever go look, in the description, we always have links to the music.
Yep.
Spotify links for the artists. So show them
Check 'em
some
out.
love.
Listen to the rest of their albums and stuff.
Yeah.
You know we don't play.
They got some good stuff.
They got some really good stuff. That's why they've been sampled. So in the next break, you'll hear Dean
Mine and
Carlos Soul Foods
sample of that,
yeah.
Which is our intro song for the podcast.
Yeah. But you'll hear the full thing,
right,
uninterrupted by my voice, or shortened.
All right, cool. Well, shall we hop back into some Lacerta files?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Where are we at?
We're on part 2. They had ended the first interview. They were talking a lot about war and like the history and like how the reptilians knew the history because they apparently evolved off like after the war.
Yeah, so they were like a subspecies.
Yeah, we were talking a lot about like the physics or like the practicalities of like these like mental abilities they say they have.
Right.
And remember there was like a part where they were talking about if we can like protect ourselves from it. And she was talking about hostile races and friendly races as well. And yeah, she didn't have a lot of faith in us. She's like, we're ignorant, like we're not really capable of understanding, but she's like doing this as like a social experiment to like see what we make of.
That's basically what the alien was saying.
Yeah,
too.
You're right. Right. This is why, like, even though there's no like proof to this story or anything, like, it does tie into lore.
It's fun to think about
to the UFO lore in an interesting way, and I think it's an interesting.
It helps blow
possibility
open.
To at least consider anyway.
Absolutely.
Just to have your
as much as you already consider it, right? So I say as much as you already consider the possibility that we are not alone in this universe, just allow this to be helpful in like opening that a bit, like making you have some context in what you
so
may or
if
may not
we
actually
aren't alone,
expect.
What are types of scenarios that could be the case because of it, right? So anyway, let's exactly. So part 2 has its own introduction by what was our guy? Ole K, right?
Yeah, that's him.
So this is his introduction to this part of the interview. It says, I once again reaffirm that the following text is the absolute truth and is not fiction. It was composed from 3 original tape recordings, which were made on April 24th, 2000, with a tape recorder during my second interview with the reptilian creature known as Lacerta. At Lacerta's request, the original text of the 31 pages was revised and shortened up to deal with some questions and answers. Some existing questions were partially shortened or amended. It was even undertaken to extract message and significance from it. This part of the interview, either not mentioned or not mentioned completely in the transcript, deals primarily with personal issues, paranormal demonstrations, the social system of the reptilian species, and alien technology and physics. The reason for the shifting of the date and time of the second meeting was a possible observation and surveillance of my own person after the publication of the first transcript. Although everything was attempted on the advice of Lacerta to keep my identity a secret, just 2 days after the dissemination of the document abroad and various unusual events took place. Please don't think that I'm paranoid. However, I believe that the publication of the interview has drawn either official attention or the attention of some organization to me. Up until this time, I usually regarded people who believed that they were being followed by the state to be nothing more than jokers. But I have now begun to revise my ideas on that since the events of January. It began with a failure of my telephone for several hours. When the phone became operational once again, there were quiet echoes and strange clicking and whirring sounds when I made calls. A defect could ostensibly not be found anywhere. Overnight, important data disappeared from my hard drive in my computer. The testing program reported defective sectors, where strangely enough, there were only data which dealt with illustrations and completed textual material from the interview. These defective sectors also contained material of a paranormal nature in the field of my research. Fortunately, the material was also stored on floppies. In addition, I discovered by pure chance some hidden data in a likewise hidden directory index, a name which appeared on the data, and the directory index is E72UJ. This is some interesting detail.
Yeah, I was gonna say it goes into a lot here.
I don't think we need to know the directory index number.
Of course we do.
Unless you're giving us all the files to validate that against.
Yeah, unless there's some way we can look that up using that.
Right. A friend who is a computer expert could not make anything of this designation, and when I was about to show it to him, the directory index had disappeared. One evening, my apartment door was standing wide open, my TV was set running, and I am absolutely confident that I had turned the TV set off. A minivan with British markings and the imprint of a Europe-wide supermarket chain parked in front of my house. I noticed the same minivan again on several occasions, traveling at a distance behind my car, even when I visited the town of blank, 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 65 kilometers away. When I returned, the car was on the other side of the street once again. I never saw anyone get into or out of the car. A knock on the door of the vehicle and on the tinted windows caused no reaction of any kind. About 2 weeks, the minivan disappeared again. When I informed EF personally about these events, he suggested that I change the place and date of the meeting in order to assure our own and Lacerta's safety. The meeting took place on April 27, 2000 in another isolated location. It was unobserved as far as I can determine. Once again, all of this may sound strange and paranoid, like a fantasy from a cheap science fiction film. However, I can only repeat to and assure the reader once again, all of this is the unadulterated truth. Believe my words or don't believe them. These things have happened and they will continue to happen, whether you believe it or not. Until it is too late, our civilization is in danger. Ole K, May 3rd, 2000.
All right. We got the shortened version here. Oh, this is the redacted, Lacerta.
Like he was
version,
saying, yeah. Right. Comment by Ole K. Date of interview, April 27, 2000. The meeting began with an appraisal of diverse questions and opinions which I had gotten from readers of the first transcript in anonymous fashion through distribution from my trustworthy friends. Some of these opinions, altogether there were over 14 pages of paper, contained comments shaped by everything from erratically religious to a fanatical tendency to welcome contact with a reptilian species. Some of these comments contained stereotypical phrases like servants of hell or species of evil one. I don't want to go into any kind of detailed description here since I don't want to pass on any further any false and radical realm of thought. All right, so here we go into the interview. Question. When you read these religious and animosity-ridden comments here, what did you think and feel then? Is the relationship between your species and ours really shaped from that kind of total negation? Answer. Does it amaze you that I am not completely angered by that? I had fully expected those kinds of extreme reactions. The programming for utter negation of another species, especially the reptilian species, as in your own case, is deeply embedded in each of your own individual consciousnesses. This ancient conditioning stems from the days of your third artificial creation, and biologically speaking, is passed down as an information genome from generation to generation. The identification of my species with the powers of darkness was a primary intention of the Elohim.
Elohim.
Yeah. That's how the Bible says it, but this is spelled with a J. But anyway, yeah, let's say Elohim. Was the primary intention of the Elohim, who liked seeing themselves in the role of the powers of light, something which in and of itself represents a paradox, since that humanoid species was extremely sensitive to your sunlight. In case you were expecting me to act offended, I guess I'll have to partially disappoint you. These obscure intentions are not really your fault. You are simply following them, for the most part, what you have inherited from your ancestors. It is indeed actually somewhat disappointing that many of you develop no especially strong individual self-conscience, and for this would help you to overcome the conditioning. As I already said, We were in direct contact in the last several centuries with some of your more primitive human tribes. These tribes had themselves succeeded in breaking through the old creation programming. They were able to meet us without tension, hate, and total rejection. Apparently, many of your modern civilized individuals are not in a position to think on their own, but rather let themselves be guided by programming and religion, which is also a manifestation of that ancient programming and part and parcel of the plan of the Elohim. Therefore, comments of that kind I'd sooner regard as amusing than irritating. They simply confirm at large measure for me my superstitions about your defined mode of thinking.
Burn.
Yeah, I mean...
We got burned.
That brings me back to the... what's his name? Dr.
Mortician?
Courtney Brown. The mortician. Brings me back to the mortician because he... one of the things I didn't bring up is that he says that this planet is essentially like a prison planet, and he also says that like the afterlife is part of the imprisonment process, so that we're essentially tricked through like afterlife technology that these beings have to like wipe our memories and reincarnate in a way where we basically have to start from scratch every time, and that,
instead of building on lives,
and that is essentially done to us, and we're like lulled into it.
That's one of the ideas of what's happening with reincarnation, at least.
That's what
that's
Dr.
what he's
Courtney is saying.
Okay.
Yeah, is that.
But there was others too that had that. Like, wasn't what's his name have a similar idea to that? I don't know, some guy that writes books about the reptilians. I think you said you followed him. What was his name? The white hair, David Icke.
David Icke.
Isn't his idea similar to that?
He does kind of have similar idea to that. Yeah, that's interesting. So maybe Dr. Courtney's a David Icke reader.
Maybe.
But yeah, it's a interesting idea. Is that we're sort of culturally and like genetically programmed to
conditioned to feel, to just not accept. So even though they're around us, we don't accept them as being different. It seems like either.
Yeah.
So we kind of, and then it makes it easy for them to use whatever.
We're either meant to see them as like evil or to like not see them
at all.
Yeah.
Like basically just blend them in, and just if you do recognize it, it just becomes like a automatic, like they're evil.
Yeah, maybe that's the source of our innate fear of snakes that so many people tend to have.
Right.
Interesting. Okay, next question. Therefore, you are not the species of the evil one, as was remarked earlier. Answer. How am I supposed to answer that? Your people still think according to a simple and completely inappropriate scheme of generalizations. Simply put, there are absolutely no purely evil species. There exist in every terrestrial and extraterrestrial species alike, both good and evil individuals. It's even true of your own people. But there is no such thing as an absolutely evil species. This conception is really very primitive. You people have believed from time immemorial what you are supposed to believe, what was foreseen for you to believe by your creators. Every well-known species, even the more highly developed ones, consists of a greater number of individual consciousnesses. At least a portion of the consciousnesses is individual, even though there are connecting fields of consciousnesses. These self-sufficient spirits are able to decide freely for themselves a lifestyle which is either good or evil according to your own human standards. It depends again on the respective point of view. Your people are not necessarily in a position to judge whether the deeds of a much more highly developed species are good or evil, because you stand at a lower observation point from which an assessment is not possible. Your simple words, good and evil, are in any case examples of a tendency towards generalization. In my language, there are many concepts for the various shades of meaning of individual behaviors in comparison to the norms of a society. Even those extraterrestrial species which are inclined to act with antagonism towards you are not species of the evil one, even though they operate negatively with respect to your own race. They do this for their own reasons and do not regard themselves as evil. Were your structured way of thinking more linear and more focused as theirs is, then you would also behave in such a fashion. The attitude of a species towards other kinds of existence naturally depends very heavily on its respective structured way of thinking. Each species sets its own priorities. To classify that as good or evil is really quite primitive. For the survival of any species argues for many varieties, among them your own, as well as for the most varied and the worst of the worst or negatively directed deeds. I won't even exclude my own kind in this regard, for there have been certain occurrences in the past which I don't personally welcome, but about which I would also not like to go into detail. None of these occurrences have happened in the last 200 years of your time scale. Please note the following. There are no absolutely good and there are no absolutely bad species, because each and every species always consists of individuals. I thought that was kind of bars right there.
Yeah.
That was a good way of explaining it.
It's a good way of explaining why.
It's a good way of thinking about the world, is in that nuanced fashion of individualism.
In like such a deep way. So like there's no aspect. Yes, you choose to like be parts of collective consciousnesses in these groups or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But each consciousness itself is individual.
Right.
And
Each
has the
consciousness
ability
is
to
joining that collective consciousness or not, and therefore they have the ability to act as an individual.
Yep.
And it's like just natural law. Like everything's a bell curve. There's going to be people with different motivations, people with different needs, people with different desires.
Yeah, they're just all going their own individual ways.
You can't just overgeneralize and call an entire species good or evil.
Right.
That makes sense. It's the same way. It's like
just like now.
It's no different than, all the anti-bigotry we've been learning over the last, few hundred years as humans.
Yep.
It's the same idea, but for species, like just because a species, has done a thing, you don't call the whole species good or bad.
Yep.
Just the way you don't do that with race or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, to generalize the entire population of the Earth into one category.
Well, like how would we feel if we somehow magically got to go to another planet and meet aliens, and they like called all humans good or all humans evil? You'd be like, well,
yeah. I mean, there's some more nuance to that.
That's
a longer conversation,
right? So anyway, let's take our next break here, and then we'll hop in for a little more.
Sounds good.
So here is the soul food version of that song. It's called Mistaken. Welcome to...
Yeah. Woke up in a haze trying to recollect my vision. My dreams kept me awake, I just can't seem to resist them. I can't escape, I'm a victim of my own addictions. It's inflicted in my system, I'm over passionate. Some would say, but they don't even know the half of it. If only you could see what's in my mind. I wonder what you think of me. If only you could hear what's in my heart now. Would you see me differently? I wonder all the time. This life is everything we make it as. And if this is truly love, then maybe we should make it last. We gotta make it through the past to get to where we're going first. I know you well, I know you, girl, I know it hurts.
Yeah, I mistook life for truth. Yeah, I mistook life for truth. Yeah, I mistook life for truth. Yeah, I took life for truth.
I'm halfway around the world, round a third on my way home. The Manila birth nerd, got 'em ringing like a payphone. Kick flip the curb with kick, push in my ear. Daydreaming the whole time, knowing my time is near. And I'm almost there, I'm almost here, I can feel it. Represent for my hometown, I gotta be the illest. For anyone that never made it, and to anyone that I'm related to that has a dream for you, I'm still trying to chase it. Confessions of a beat junkie. Give me peace and beats, I don't really need money. Using reason and wisdom to create melodic rhythms. Force feed a system with my vision till they gotta listen. I'm Scottie Pippen, underrated, how to spittin' in the kitchen, mixing kicks with the snares. Hibernating in the lab, staying on my grizzly bear. Say my name into the atmosphere for the world to hear. Yeah.
I mistook life for truth. Yeah, I mistook life for truth. Yeah, I mistook life for truth. Yeah, I took life for truth.
Yeah. Coasting on my dreams, flying through the sky high, wondering if this is the real life. Guess this is what it feels like to live the dream I always wanted, right here in this very moment. I wish I could hold this for life, yeah. Blew up almost overnight. Fireworks, dynamite. Yeah. Ha ha ha. Yeah. Coasting on my dreams, flying through the skies high, wondering if this is the real life. Cause this is what it feels like to live the dream I always wanted, right here in this very moment. I wish I could hold this for life. Hold this for life.
Welcome back.
Welcome to Duality Check.
Yeah, John did guitar, and I think he laid out the drums on that song too. Yeah, it was a whole like collaborative thing we did together for a commercial for Reason.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's what this was for.
They used to be called Propeller Heads. Now it's Reason Studios, but the music software. Mm-hmm. We got to do a commercial for them. I'll link that in the description if y'all are interested in checking out young Dean.
Yeah.
Making beats. Anyway, cool. Let's hop back into Lacerta.
Yeah.
Next question from Ole K. In the letters that I got, there was often the question whether you could go into any greater detail regarding the advanced physics that you commented on last time. Many people said your words made no sense. For example, how do UFOs function? How do they fly? How do they perform the maneuvers that they do? Answer. I ought to explain that to people? That's not all that simple. Let me think about it for a minute. I always have to use very simple words in order to make clear to you the basic principles of a higher kind of science. Let's try this. You have to be clear about some fundamental facts. The very first thing is that you must divide up the conception of the physical world because each existence consists of different layers. Let's say for simplicity's sake that it consists of a material illusion and a sphere of influence. Translator's note, no legitimate translation exists for the word Feldraum. Feld means field, Rom means space, room, expanse. Therefore, I'm translating it as sphere of influence, but I would probably translate that as space. Field would be like space-time.
Yeah.
The field of space. Yeah. So in that context, so she says, let's say for simplicity's sake that it consists of a material illusion and a like space field, which sounds a lot like a spirit world and a physical world.
Right.
Anyway, she says certain physical conditions are associated with the realm of the material, as in concrete, while other and more complicated conditions are associated with the sphere of influence of the material world. Your conception of the physical world is based upon a simple material illusion. That illusion is further subdivided into three elementary or basic conditions of matter. A fourth and very important condition also exists, which you simply pay attention to more or less as you choose. It is the one bordering on the sphere of influence or plasma realm. For you, the theory for a controlled transformation or an elevation of the frequency of matter and the stable existence of this fourth aggregate condition of matter is not very common, or it exists at a very primitive level. In parentheses here, it says, as an aside, there are simply 5 states of matter, but the post-plasma state would really be going too far, and it would only serve to confuse you. Besides, it's not necessary for an understanding of the basic theory. It is connected with diverse phenomena, which you would characterize as paranormal. Now, back to the essentials. Plasma now. With plasma, I don't mean just hot gas, as the concept generally simplified by your people, but rather I mean a higher aggregate condition of matter. A plasma state of matter is a special form of matter which lies between its real existence and the sphere of influence. Okay, so now I'm reading sphere of influence more as like the spiritual side of things.
Yeah.
That is a complete loss of mass and pure accretion of energy of various form whenever matter is pushed or shoved. Note, no explanation was given for the use of the word pushed, shoved as used in this concept. Your guess is as good as mine. Accelerated, I guess. The fourth state of matter is very important for physical conditions, which can be used, for example, to, how should I express this to you, generate anti-gravity. That's a rather strange human word, not really correct, but you ought to understand it better this way. Essentially, in the world of real physics, there are no bipolar forces, rather only observer-dependent reflective behavior. Observer-dependent reflective behavior. Of a single large unified force at different levels. With anti-gravity, or the displacement of gravitational characteristics into levels, one can, for example, cause apparently solid matter to levitate. This method is employed partly by us and by extraterrestrials as well as a means of propulsion for their UFOs. You people are moving on a really primitive level towards a similar concept for your secret military projects. But since you have more or less stolen this technology and it was later falsely passed on to you intentionally by the extraterrestrials, you lack a real physical understanding. As a result, you have to struggle with problems of instability and radiation with your UFOs. According to my information, there have been a great number of deaths of your people because of intense radiation and field disturbances. Don't you agree? This is also an example of the business regarding the question of good and evil. You people play with unknown forces and thereby accept the death of colleagues of your own kind, for they are dying for a greater cause, namely for the advancement of your technology, which as a result is being put into place once again for the purpose of war, i.e. negative pursuits. That's such a good point. Now, one can give you the benefit of the doubt that only the least number of your kind have any knowledge about these alien projects, which are, as you explain it, top secret. It was told to you that the higher ordinal or ranking number of basic matter, the simpler the heightening of the condition, but that is only partially correct. If you can't circumvent these powers, then you're better off not attempting it. But your kind has always been ignorant and has from time immemorial tried to play around with forces for which you have not even understood. Why would that ever change? Lost my place there.
Yeah.
You remember this business of copper fusion? By means of the fluctuation at the right angle with induced radiation field, copper is fused with other elements. The illusion of matter is fused. The fields of the sphere of influence overlap each other, but the main force would be reflected by that process and would assume a quasi-bipolar character. The resulting connection and force field would therefore not be stable in the normal condition of matter and unsuited for tasks. As a result, the entire field spectrum is shifted to a higher plasma-like condition, whereby the spectrum comes together with this harsh shifting to the opposite pole side. The word is not correct of the force field, and it resembles quite closely with a gravitational shift. This shifting causes a tilting of the repulsing quasi-bipolar force, which now no longer flows to the interior of the force field, but rather flows partly to the exterior of the field. The result is an inner stratifying reflective force field, which is very difficult to modulate within certain technical boundaries in relation to its own characteristics. It can also carry out a multiplicity of tasks, as for example, causing massive flying objects to be levitated or maneuvered. It can also exert a camouflage function in the realm of electromagnetic radiation, as well as manipulate temporal sequences of events, indeed only to very limited extent, and other things as well. Are you familiar with your own quantum tunnel effect? Even the amplitude equalizations among genuine matter can be achieved with one of those kinds of fields if the frequency and the distance from the plane of the field are high enough. Unfortunately, the whole thing that I have explained to you in your words has come out to be rather primitive, I'm afraid. It sounds rather strange and certainly impossible for your comprehension. But perhaps this simple explanation can be of some use to you in helping you understand. But then again, maybe not.
Yeah.
Huh. So essentially plasmoids?
Right. And directed in certain ways.
Yeah. So like causing matter to take that different state to create different field effects, which we call gravity and anti-gravity, but she thinks is oversimplified to call it that. It would also be really useful for, say, for instance, lifting giant stones.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Could be like a frequency thing too, man.
Yeah, which is where the whole like ancient stuff tying over.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to just say something's made of stone, therefore it's primitive. But like when the stones are freaking 1,000 tons,
and they're basically all perfectly cut and
right,
stacked, and had a limestone casing.
When the cream of the crop of our modern buildings, like some of them, like built out of like giant stone, you know, like it lasts so long.
Yep. That's what's lasted the longest on Earth.
So seeing it as primitive doesn't make a ton of sense if it's megalithic.
Yeah. So imagine there being a reptilian species that had this technology and was like created these things way back when.
Yeah. Right.
And these are just relics of that time.
Right.
Or some species, you know, whether it be their ancestors or not.
Well, with them being here 56 million years, as she says it, then,
right.
Then
It would be them.
Coming out, you know, 12,000 years ago before during the Ice Age, and having a bunch of species or having a bunch of buildings on the surface when humans haven't necessarily populated the entire planet yet.
Yeah. I would love to hear about that. Like what their history is like.
Right.
From like our point of view.
Right.
From our historical times, like what is all that happened for them in that time?
Yeah. Interesting. Should I keep going?
Yeah, he woke up, but he hasn't gotten up yet. So
okay, I'll keep going
for a second.
For a bit. Question: is there a scientific substantiation for paranormal powers, as for example with your powers of thought? Answer: yes. In order to explain that, one has to acknowledge the physical reality of the sphere of influence, Feldrum. I'll try to do it. Wait just a second. You're going to have to separate yourself mentally from the illusion that you see is the true nature of the universe. It is at best the surface of a side. Imagine for yourself that all the matter here, you, this table, this pencil, this technical device, this paper, does not really exist, but that it is only the result of a field oscillation and a concentration of energy. all matter that you see, every creature, every planet and star in this universe has an information energy equivalent. In the sphere of influence, which is located on a main field, the general level of things. Now there's not only one level, but several. Last time I had mentioned that highly developed species, which are capable of changing levels, which is something completely different from the simple bubble changing. For bubbles are a part of each and every level. Do you understand? Dimensions, as you call them, are part of a solitary bubble. Bubbles or universal foam are a part of a level, and levels and layers are layers in the sphere of influence. While each sphere of influence acting in the capacity of single physical size is essentially unending, it is composed of innumerable information energy layers and general levels. There are in the sphere of influence no null levels. All are the same, but they are separated by means of their energy conditions. I notice that I am confusing you now. I think I had to stop with this explanation.
Yeah, that was... Whew.
Huh.
Solitary bubbles.
So...
Universal foam is part of a level. That's interesting.
Yeah.
These dimensions. So this reminds me of, what's that guy's name? With the Einstein intuition.
Yeah. I forget his name. Tad Roberts.
Yeah. Dad Roberts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like his idea, like these like quantum bubbles or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Highly developed species. Yeah. Information energy equivalent. So I liked the part where she was saying that what you see doesn't really exist. It's the result of a field, an oscillation, and a concentration of energy. She said, well, where did she say it was like we're only seeing like one side of it?
Oh, that was earlier.
Oh, right.
Yeah, she said.
And you have to separate yourself mentally from the illusion that which you see is the true nature of the universe. It is at best the surface of a side.
Yeah.
Right. So like, imagine
more
there's a bunch of like information units that make up the universe, and when we look around, we're only seeing one side of the information unit. You can see it from so many different perspectives.
Yeah. It's multidimensional.
But what we interact with, what our senses are tuned to, is one particular side of it.
Yeah. We're not getting the full scope of everything.
Right.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's almost like there's like a thing that's projecting all of the different universes.
Yeah.
With light or energy.
I wonder what she means by the bubbles. Like, are the bubbles like matter?
Dimensions.
Yeah.
So she says dimensions, as you call them, are part of a solitary bubble. Bubbles or universal foam are a part of a level, and the levels are layers in the sphere of influence. While the sphere of influence, acting in the capacity of single physical size, is essentially unending, and it is composed of innumerable information energy layers and general levels. They are in a sphere of influence, no null levels. They are all the same, but they are separated by means of their energy conditions.
Yeah. It makes me think of the freaking DMT experience, like where I was, like the universe like folded away.
Yeah, like you were sucked back into...
Like I was seeing everything from a totally different perspective. It was weird. But
seeing a different side of the coin.
Yeah, maybe that was what I could only describe as like folding. Anyway, next question. No, please continue. How do concrete paranormal powers arise? Well, okay then. Let's try something simpler. Again, it's not completely correct, but let's begin in this manner. Tangible matter on this side is mirrored in the sphere of influence, Feldrum, as a field with distinct layers. These layers contain information. As an example about the as an example, about the simple structure of matter or the string frequency, but also there is stored information stemming from the development of matter. Are you familiar with the human concept of morphogenetic fields? One part of the layer could be designated as such. Now there is another intermediary layer for which you unfortunately have no human concept, since the theory is not common in human thinking. Let's call it a paralayer. For this layer is mainly responsible for everything which you call psi and paranormal, which lies outside the boundaries of your primitive science. This paralayer lies between the layers of matter and the morphogenetic layers of a field in the sphere of influence. It can actively integrate with your body. Your body, for example, is mirrored as a field in the sphere of influence, Feldrom. That doesn't mean that it does not also exist here as well as flesh, blood, bones in the form of matter, strings, or atoms. But not only that, existence is always a duality. Boom.
Oh, interesting.
Some layers of the field contain simple information about the solid matter of your body and its frequency, while other layers contain information about your spirit, your consciousness, or, speaking from a human religious point of view, your soul. Awareness or consciousness in this case is the simple energy matrix divided into different layers of your field in the sphere of influence. Nothing more, nothing less.
Oh.
So we're energy matrices.
Yeah, we have different layers of energy, and we can kind of interesting. So it makes like the idea of like being like what it might be like to be your soul,
right? Like
after death, right?
Yeah.
If you were to like go back as your soul, and you have these different sides of you, just like that's saying like, and you can like basically use your energy in different slices for what it is that your soul needs to, and that's what plugs you in wherever.
Right.
In my
and you
head.
Can probably like vibrate or like shape yourself in a certain way to like exert influence on this sort of slice of reality that we call the physical world.
Like you're selecting from a menu.
Yeah.
In a video game.
Some layers of the field contain simple information about solid matter of your body and its frequency, while other layers contain... Oh, I already did that part. Genuine awareness can also exist here on the matter side, but not only in the form of post-plasma, the fifth form of matter. With the necessary physical knowledge and the corresponding technology, the consciousness/awareness matrix or soul can also be separated from its field of rest. It can, despite its removal, continue to exist in a self-sufficient manner for a certain amount of time. That has a strange occult name of soul robbing. Interesting. Can also be separated from its field of rest. It can continue to... Oh, interesting. So people's souls can be pulled out of their bodies.
Oh, wow.
So that's probably like where possession and channeling comes in on the more like voluntary side of the
spectrum, yeah.
Yeah. But above all, we're talking about science here, not magic or dark forces. Comment by Ole K. The soul robbing was mentioned in one of the radical, religiously motivated comments in the connection with the reptilian species. Okay, so she's specifically calling out a comment there.
Oh, okay.
Creatures with more powerful mental states can have a direct influence on the paralayer by means of consciousness awareness fields. Now, this layer is not limited only to the individual, but rather as part of a general information layer. You could call it, in a prosaic sense, the community soul that is connected with all animate and inanimate matter in a consciousness which exists on this main level. The biological cause of these abilities lies on the side of matter, by the way, in the pituitary gland, which always is in the position to generate the frequencies to actively control the sphere of influence, Feldrom. Even you people could theoretically do this, however, you are solidly blocked in these things. As I have said, the paralayer can interact with mind as well as with matter. For example, if I decide to use my mental powers once more in order to move this pencil, then simply said, I imagine in my mind how consciousness / awareness expands / amplifies itself on the matter side in the form of post-plasma to the pencil. In the sphere of influence, this causes simultaneously an automatic command from the consciousness awareness layer to the paralayer to interact with the matter layer of the pencil. Since the paralayer is not confined to the body, it is not even a problem that the pencil lies over there, or I can unerringly reach it. Even without moving my matter body, post-plasma on this side, paralayer on the other. So,
talking about like teleportation.
No, well, we're talking about telekinesis. She's saying
That's
she could lift. I could lift your eye drops right there.
Yeah.
If I had enough conscious awareness of that paralayer of aspect of myself, I could interact with it, and by interacting with it, I can interact with the paralayer of those eye drops, exerting influence that manifest in what we know as the material world.
That reminds me of the Interstellar scene when he's in the Tesseract.
Right.
And he's interacting with the
like a vibrational version of the watch, and it's causing the watch to move in the quote unquote,
and he's able to pull the strings
the
of the thing, and it like shoots the books off the bookshelf and stuff.
Right. So they're saying there's essentially this like vibrational fifth state of matter state.
It's like the vibrational.
All of us have like a reflection.
And it creates the image. Yeah, it creates the image that we all see.
Right.
Which is the matter, right? And we're able to interact with it. Could you imagine if we ever like get to a point where we like there's like a big breakthrough and
we can just directly observe through instruments this sort of fifth state and just like record.
Dude, I'm saying like
what spirits look like.
Yeah, or even have the ability to point a camera and like see the spirit within or whatever, right? Point it at an object and be able to see the spirit.
Well, too, because like as soon as you have some sort of direct feedback like that, you can start to learn to control it in a more effective way. Like if you have a direct feedback loop of like a real time look at your own para layer body, your soul, your spirit, and you can like meditate and like watch how to manipulate your consciousness and see how that is affecting that layer of reality, you can start to learn to control it and reach out with it and manipulate it.
That's like some Doctor Strange stuff.
And you can point it at the fireplace when something falls off. You're like, freaking ghost.
That's some Doctor Strange stuff, dude.
Yeah.
Cool. Was that the end of that question or no?
Yeah,
I think it was.
But there's another comment by Ole K. He says, I certify that the pencil mentioned above abruptly at that very moment jumped into the air to a height of 20 centimeters, then fell back to the surface of the table. The sound is clearly heard on the recording tape. No one visibly had touched that pencil. So he's saying she's like using it as a physical demonstration as she's explaining it, which is pretty badass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should we take another break here and then finish it off?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, cool. For the last song today, we got TJ McNulty, and the song's called Uncanny Potential.
Let's get it.
For something great, well, I can't understand him, but I like him anyways, and you know that you have to be young and smooth nowadays. Oh yeah, that's the way. the man. Just look how elegantly he stands in that suit and tie. Look at the change in his eye. I wanna shake that hand. Well, I can't tell because it all sounds the same to me. Well, you call me ignorant, saying dark's the only reason I see. Well, you know that 82 of us, we feel the same. Oh yeah, 82 of us say it's time for a change. Well, my priest even says he is the man. Well, churches stay separate, but yet we don't understand. Cause that suit and tie, oh, it's got me mesmerized. He's gonna change this land. He's gonna change me. He's gonna change me.
Welcome back.
All right.
We were going on, kind of riffing on this topic outside while we were taking a break. And yeah, I just find this explanation somewhat plausible. It's like, it's interesting. And it kind of like resonates with like my experiences on, or my experience on DMT.
Yeah.
Which I cannot wait to tell you guys the whole story.
Yeah, maybe we can do that next week.
Yeah, let's do that. All right, so next question. That is fascinating. Which kinds of paranormal activities can one generate with that? Answer, all kinds. Everything that you call paranormal. As I said, this special layer lies in the sphere of influence Feldrum between the morphogenetic information layers and the matter layers, and can interact with respect to both sides. That is to say, it can be interacted with solid matter as well as with mind or mental information, wherewith we can achieve everything that is generally designated as telekinesis and telepathy. The connection, absorption with another consciousness awareness is generally separate in the procedure from the simple influence of matter, since different consciousnesses/awareness fields work with different oscillations. A consciousness/awareness that sends or a consciousness that/awareness that listens must first adapt itself to the other mind exactly before any access is possible. Most species also have chances to block the alien access, but you people don't have this. The following is generally valid. The stronger the paranormal abilities of a species, the simpler the adaptation and the access. Our own abilities are not so powerfully developed. Therefore, we first have to learn specifically alien mind influence in order to use our mimicry. For example, where mimicry is actually quite simple in your minds due to the implanting of the on-off switch. Some of these abilities are also partially inherited. Mother and child of my kind, as an example, are attuned exactly during the first months of life, partially also in the egg covering the expectant mother, and communicate telepathically. In order to influence you people, we need a certain amount of time for practicing despite your simple structure. Therefore, it is forbidden, for example, for adults of my kind before the age of enlightenment to come to the surface of the earth. That term is synonymous, along with other things, with full physical strength. In the case of not fully developed abilities, the danger of discovery by you would be too great. So they only come up if they have developed to a certain point and they can mask themselves from us.
Yeah, instead of going up like too young.
Yeah. By the way, there are, of course, numerous secret teachings about the real possibilities which can give one these abilities, but I really don't know anything exact about that. So she hasn't studied human esoterica. Whenever an alien mind ought to be influenced, then there are some generally valid steps which are set into motion by other extraterrestrial species. First and foremost, the alien oscillation must be felt. Something generally that is done automatically by the brain, i.e., for the one the field oscillation. Field oscillation. For the other, the electrical brain waves here in the normal space, which matter inhibits. That is not especially difficult. After that, one simply probes for the other consciousness / awareness in the mind with a post-plasma manifestation. The sphere of influence, Feldrum, reacts to the connection, and the connection is there. Now one can read out information from the first one and record the desired information to the second one in the correct location. You asked me last time whether you people have the opportunity to protect yourselves against this influence. As I told you, that only an awake and concentrated mind can have any kind of chance to withstand it. In this state of mind, the oscillations change very abruptly and access becomes complicated. More precisely, it can come as a painful recoil. Whenever you close your eyes, then the field becomes flat and alien access to the mind is immediately possible and without restriction. In terms of your chances against a more highly developed species, you have none at all. They are able to adjust the oscillations faster than you can change. I could even demonstrate it on you, but you were really horrified and confused the last time, so we'll just leave it at an explanation. This explanation presumably sounds to you like, as you say, something esoteric or from the occult or magic. There it is. Mm-hmm. The reason for that is simply that you lack the basic understanding for seeing the background reasons. All paranormal phenomena have a purely scientific origination. None of this has anything to do with the supernatural powers. As we grow up with this kind of knowledge, we know how one makes use of the powers and where they come from. We are acquainted with theory and practice. You are not. Therefore, you really don't understand what happens in your world. You see only one side of existence, not the other. I mean here both that are physical. Everything paranormal is dualistic, and it exists in the space that matter inhibits as well as in the sphere of influence, Feldrum. To be explained, it can only be explained by the acceptance of the latter because the sphere of influence is the basis. I would welcome an end to the scientific questions since you really aren't grasping them anyway. We're wasting more or less valuable time by doing this. Interesting. Only one last question. At our first meeting in December, you made it quite clear that you didn't want to discuss scientific and paranormal concerns. Why the openness now? The last time I saw really no necessity in overburdening you with the facts of that kind, and now you are obviously overburdened. Therefore, I have preferred only to mention these topics in a peripheral sense. Apparently, however, some of my performances today have set you to thinking about your world, something that can't be all bad. And by the way, your human scientists will tend to regard my comments as humbug. And so I see no great danger in spreading this information widely. No one will pay much attention to it. By the way, the words of people who have characterized me as a creature of evil have their basis in the belief in occult powers and magic, both of which things do not exist. There is no magic, only highly developed science, and everything that you label as magic is only part of science. If you would only comprehend that, then you would be able to be a step ahead in your development. My openness on this issue ends here. Pose other questions, please. Interesting. So, as long as we understand that the physical is not everything,
we at least are setting ourselves up
for being able to learn it.
Yeah. Instead of being closed off and rejecting it.
Which, yeah, sounds like
Enlightenment 2026.
the importance of like belief and the importance of the God dang it, placebo. But all right, question. Yeah. Good. Let's talk about UFOs. Can you explain to me how our government came into possession of UFO material to the point that they could start their own projects? Did it have anything to do with the Roswell incident? Answer. Yes, but that incident was not the first one. I am no historian, but I am studying your current behavior, so my knowledge about these events in your history is presumably not very extensive. I'll try to explain to you what I know about those things which happened at that time. Let me think about it for a second. In the years 1946 to 1953, in your time scale, there were 5 cases where extraterrestrial ships crashed to the surface of Earth. In that crash, which you call the Roswell incident, there was not only 1 alien ship involved, but 2 that crashed after a collision in different parts of the land in the West, the one you call the USA. You have to know that the ships of this particular species can remain levitating in the air for a particular period of time, even though they are damaged. That accounts for the spatial difference in their crash locations. These were indeed not the first crashes, but by that time, the second and third, another ship had crashed in 1946, but it was destroyed beyond usability. One thing first before the explanation. It certainly sounds ridiculous to you that such highly developed extraterrestrial ships may simply crash. It does, thank you. And that a relatively large number did in so relatively short amount of time. The explanation for that is likewise more than strange, but it is correct. It does not lie in the ship's drive itself, but rather in the direction of the field to your planet. This species that we are discussing, and it was always in this time period that the species used a disc-shaped craft, used a propulsion system which ran according to the normal principle of fusion, to be sure, but one that at that time had employed a more than unconventional method for field alignment. This method had various advantages but also disadvantages. The repelling field must of course lie in the absolute correct angle to the surface of the Earth. Interesting. This species used an alignment technology in their ships with which the field locked into place all points of the Earth's magnetic field. Now, at that time, the species had just arrived on the Earth and their point of origin lay on a planet with a more stable magnetic field for which they had developed and aligned their drive. The magnetic field of Earth is not really all that stable. It is subject to cyclical variations, and it forms field eddies under unfavorable conditions. Whenever a ship with one of those kinds of drives gets into a field fluctuation or an eddy that is too strong, then for a short time the repelling field can no longer align itself correctly, and the ship glides uncontrolled in its flight path. If the drive is operating correctly, to be sure, but the field fluctuates in all directions, and because of that, the ship can crash. In the case of 1947, which you addressed, it is my understanding that one of the ships got caught in a fluctuation. Its field linked up unintentionally with that of its squadron leader, and it collided with another ship whereby both of them were heavily damaged. The cause for the magnetic fluctuation at that time was probably an electrical disturbance brought about by a weather event. Both ships crashed as a result. One of them fell near the collision point and the other 100 kilometers or so distant. All occupants were killed in the impact. The thin hull structure of that kind of disc craft is, in and of itself, not very stable, since those discs have not been designed for crashes as well as for flight in a field where there are exterior forces at work. Now, your human military collected the individual pieces at first until they discovered the whole ships with the dead creatures aboard. Immediately, they classified everything as top secret and brought them to their military bases in order to analyze the drive. The secret endeavor was to set the alien technology in place later against evil enemies of that great country. That is as primitive as it is ridiculous. I believe I remember, I don't want to specify exactly your date, that it was probably between 1949 and 1952 that there was a rather bad accident during some research being done on one of the wrecks. According to what I heard, what members of my species were told by members of that government, it resulted in an unintentional activation of one of the drive's components in the unshielded condition. As a result, for a very short period of time, how should I phrase this? There was an unchecked shift of the environment to a plasma-like condition, which on the other hand, through a very, very unfortunate accident, caused an overturning of the general power field into a magnetic pulse of immense power. Do you have any idea what kind of an effect a plasma magnetic jolt has when it comes into contact with an organism? No, how should you know that? Of course you don't. Disturbances in the structure of the field and bioelectric feedback. Imagine, if you will, a human body which is engulfed in bright flames for 3 to 4 of your days. Those flames apparently do not go out, and they burn the body right down to its last constituents. Well then, you have an approximate impression of what happened. I think that 20 or 30 of your scientists were killed in that lab. 2 further crashes occurred in 1950 and 1953 in the water catchment area of the American continent. Those ships were able to be recovered from the crashes relatively intact. The one in 1953, as I remember, even had an intact drive core. It was by means of that device you saw for the first time that you had understood the entire concept fully incorrectly and that you reconstructed it fully incorrectly. Even today, you still don't have it right. That species which had built the ships in the first place, a species which I, by the way, count among those who are unfriendly towards you, was naturally worried about the investigation of their own technology by your kind. They did not want, however, at that early point in time to be in direct conflict with you, and so they chose the diplomatic path and came into contact with that government during your 1960s. Of course, they did not divulge the real reasons for their being here, copper, hydrogen, air, but rather they pretended to be curious researchers and offered to show people the functioning principle of the ships, whereby they would expect in return some favors. Simple-minded as you are, you of course agreed to it and were deceived. You gave them raw materials. You gave them secured locations for their bases. You gave them access to your most secret defense data. You gave them access to your DNA and much more, and all just to quench your greed for power and information. The alien species, of course, quickly noticed that they were dealing with simple-minded creatures, and they gave you false and inferior information about their technology so that they receive much more out of the collaboration than your kind do. For example, they gave you information that the drive can only be constructed with unstable elements of a higher ranking number, but they withheld the information that the field drive can be constructed with various modifications to work, as well as with stable elements of a lower periodic number, and generally that is the way it's done. Interesting. So she's saying we had interactions with these beings and they gave us fake information about reverse engineering the UFOs. I wonder, to
keep us off of developing it, you think?
Yeah, and in return they got a bunch of perks out of the deal and didn't have to reveal all that much, and we're still sort of like struggling with it. But this was back in 2000. Like, I wonder where it's come since then.
Yeah, I mean, we could have just the top shit now.
Maybe.
Or we're stuck and haven't done anything.
Yeah.
Because they've been giving us false information.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what's forced disclosure or controlled disclosure to the point where we have to be brought in to the Federation of Aliens.
Right. So imagine the much easier. So they're saying like the the plans they gave us for making the engines require like high atomic number elements, stuff that's hard for us to make that doesn't occur naturally on our planet.
Right, it takes a lot of energy to make these things, yeah.
Right, so we're probably employing like particle accelerators and stuff to smash together atoms and make like heavy elements artificially.
Yeah.
But like doing it that way is a super inefficient way because of our power generation methods of being able to like generate. So we can't even use it. But they're saying there's like other ways with lower atomic numbers where
it's usable.
It's just, and that she says that's the way most of them do it. It's just, you just got to know the trick.
Right. So we just got to level up, man.
Right.
We just got to level up in our understanding.
That layer of the tech tree yet.
Maybe the information we receive in Easter of 2026 will help us get there.
Maybe, huh? Through these half-truths, they made you dependent on the synthesizing of high-numbered elements and thereby renewed their own technology. Their clues to the construction of your UFOs were laid out in such a way that the solution to old problems caused new problems to arise simultaneously. They never told you the complete truth, but always built in again and again clever lies, which later led to technical problems and your dependence on them. In the last years of your 1970s and your early 1980s, it finally came down to various events between the alien species and that human government. I don't want to go into detail here since there is much that I am not exactly sure of. The whole thing lay in the context with some new, or better said, the old technical problems with your own self-constructed ships, whose camouflage and drive partially failed to function in test flights in the open. Because of that, the function of secrecy was threatened. Your military and your politicians slowly, very slowly, came to the conclusion after more than 20 years of this that they had been deceived by that alien species.
Doesn't surprise me.
Multitudinous incongruencies. That's a band name. And the overstepping of bounds of the treaties by both sides finally led to an altercation between you and the extraterrestrials, which culminated in the liftoff of 3 of the alien aerial objects through a special, EMP, electromagnetic pulse weapon, and a military skirmish at one of their underground installations. As a consequence of these attacks, the alien species ultimately withdrew from all contact with you and was understandably more than angered about your kind. Therefore, I counted these extraterrestrials among the 3 groups who are hostile towards you. And while the other 2 are more occupied with their own business, among them waging a cold war for dominance of your planet, your old friends and partners are preparing to supply themselves finally with the sole and absolute dominance over raw materials and human DNA. At the moment, it is probably true that they lack some of the technical possibilities and the large amount of forces which they need in order to achieve their goals directly. In spite of that, we are counting on negative actions, possibly ever of a more subtle kind, against you in the next few years or decades. So we being manipulated.
Okay. Doesn't surprise me. Especially if they're of higher capabilities, right?
Right. Question: will the other extraterrestrial species undertake nothing against these warlike actions? Specifically, something ought to be on Earth for the more highly developed species?
Answer. You're wrong.
Yeah, no, he's asking basically, why don't the other species like come in
and help out? Yeah.
Help out. Like, don't they have stuff on Earth too? And she's like, no, you're wrong there. Specifically for the more highly developed species, they're simply at very least your fate. You are animals for them, animals in a very large lab. Understandably, an alien intervention on your planet would disturb their projects, but I don't think that they accept a confrontation with other species for it. Many of them could look for another research planet for themselves, or could study over a long distance your behavior and your consciousness awareness, since crisis situations could have an attraction for their studies. Whenever you people take a look at an anthill and another person comes along and steps on the anthill, what do? You go on your way, or you search another anthill until you observe the ants in their crisis condition. But would one of you, even though he were larger and more powerful than the one who stepped on the anthill in the first place, defend the meaningless ants? No. You have to imagine for yourself the viewpoint of the more highly advanced creatures.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. Yeah. So they're here, they're doing their own things, they're doing their own studies. Someone comes along and fucks with us. Like, whatever. Like,
just go over here.
Like, that was kind of a dick move, but like, what are you really going to do?
Yeah, I can go study over here.
Right.
Or go back in time and keep studying it or something. You know?
Or even us, like, we have like morals that lead a lot of people to be like, dude, like, cruelty to animals is fucked up.
Yeah.
But most of us have a line there, and like, depending on how low you go on the animals, like, you get down to like ants, like, you don't generally care.
Yeah, I mean, they can be annoying, but you're not going to like go out of your way to like F them up.
Right.
Like if you see them outside.
Or if you see someone else just killing ants because they want to kill ants.
Right.
You know, like,
right.
Even just being a dick about it and stepping on an anthill, like, it's still just ants.
You're not calling the cops.
What, are you going to get in a fight with someone over them stepping on an anthill?
Yeah, you're not gonna intervene necessarily.
Right.
That's a good point.
Will the other extraterrestrial species undertake nothing? Oh, yeah. Okay. You're wrong there. Specifically, did I go all the way through that? Where did I stop? Your planet. Right.
Yeah,
many of them could look for other research planets for themselves.
You're all the way down to the next paragraph.
Oh, right. You are the ants. Don't expect any help from them. Of course, we would also ask for help when it became clear that your old partners were ganging up on you. We would also ask for help. Yeah. Some mentions of that human government are fully aware. Some members of that human government are fully aware of our existence, also partially owing to an old religious basis. For example, there is a gigantic, partially underground building in the capital which is totally dedicated to my species, and that has a direct approach to an elevator shaft to an underground system. In this building, partial meetings have taken place and do take place between us and humans. We have passed on information to you in the last few years. According to what I know, we will keep ourselves as far away from the conflict as we can. You ought to learn to solve your own problems yourselves, or to become intelligent enough to never create these kinds of situations. What will come and who will possibly place themselves on your side, only time will tell. I do not really want to make any indications about that.
Okay.
Question. Here I have 5 prints of different UFOs which claim to show UFOs. Can you take a look at the pictures and tell me in which of them actual extraterrestrial craft can be seen? I can try it. You pose many questions to me today which even I cannot answer unequivocally. Don't overestimate my knowledge. I'm no expert in alien technology and the construction of extraterrestrial ships. To be sure, they are mostly some technical details and peculiarities about genuine UFOs, with whose help one can easily differentiate them from natural phenomena or human forgeries. You falsify sometimes the pattern of genuine ships. Therefore, it is not so easy simply with the absolute certainty to identify an object. I'll try it. Show me the photos. Comment by Ole K. She considers the pictures respectively for only a couple of seconds and then sorted out photos 1, 3, and 5. These 3 pictures here are obvious counterfeits to an erroneous identifications. In the one picture, it certainly seems to me that a real existing ship of an alien species was adapted for small model here. It lacks important characteristics which are tied with the technicality and the technically and physically associated field. Generally speaking, a picture is in all the more a fake. The clearer the outline and the colors are, because a levitating ship is generally hidden in a shifted field condition that even distorts the colors or forms according to alignment. It might perhaps sound strange, but hazy and spectrally shifted photos are sometimes to be interpreted as an indication for possibly authenticity. By the way, this object is floating above the water. If it were a genuine ship, we would have to see in any case either a trough or a swell on the surface, since the surface is flat. It is obviously not a genuine ship, in my opinion. None of these three pictures show genuine objects in flight or UFOs. Here in this picture, I see, above all, no artificial object in flight. It seems much more to deal with only a light reflex in your simple optical cameras. You really ought to be intelligent enough to not fall for a mix-up like that. When your general public chases counterfeits and frauds for a long time, then they will presumably discover too late what is really going on in front of them in their atmosphere. This is photo 2, apparently.
Oh, wow.
This one seems to be genuine. At least it displays the necessary characteristics. I would assign it at first glance to an alien species who have been visiting your planet for the last 35 years or so. The object itself is metallic and dish-shaped. Certainly is distorted in form and color by means of a field effect. These 4 white and very long processes on the underside of the ship itself portray a kind of quasi-gravitational light manipulation, i.e. the universal force field is being shifted in the direction of a simulated gravity. Actually, it is not a genuine light. It is mostly not a genuine light, whenever you see illuminating UFOs, but a special strongly charged form field which manifests itself in the space and that matter inhibits as a quasi-light. So genuine UFOs should have some sort of like weird light shifting effects. Like they should come off like very bright and they look like weird shapes, because it's not actually the shape of the light coming off the object, it's the shape of the field distorting.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like if it's okay.
Yeah.
So if maybe it is like if you think about, like we have a field, like if we, like even if individuals, like if you had the technology for an individual to fly through space in whatever gravitational thing, like it would have a thing larger than it in some sort of like, you know, fashion that's like, so when you see the reflective, it has a certain shape. That's why you see these different larger and more erratic shapes and,
right.
You know?
Probably
different
why a lot of them come off as like orbs and stuff too.
Because there's different loads,
right?
You know, whatever's in it is creating the shape itself. At least possibly.
The reason for the activation of this special high energy system is in an atmosphere is not completely clear to me. It is possible that it is a kind of investigating or influencing of the environment. In any case, it is terribly careless of that species to allow this technology to be photographed by humans. Well, I guess that most of you just plain don't understand it, and those who do will not say anything about it to the general public. This one is photo number 4.
Classic triangle-shaped UFO.
Yeah, with the lights at each corner and then one in the middle. This is, in fact, a genuine aerial object. It is in no way extraterrestrial. Triangular aerial objects in flight are simply not used by alien species, not in this form, at least. That streamlined kind of form is a human concept. It is one of your own secret military projects that you build with the help of immature alien technology. Technology that was handed over to you by the extraterrestrials during the 60s and 70s. Generally, the form of the whole for a genuine extraterrestrial ship is of no consequence. For inside the field itself, there are no exterior forces that have any effect there. In general, the ships have a rounded off form that they are built with hard edges, such as a disc or a cylinder, so that the field can flow more easily. Your projects decree that along with the alien drive field, there is also a conventional jet engine system. Therefore, they are always triangular and built thus with streamlining in order to be steerable with this primitive recoil principle. In the example here, the ship glides above all on its genuine field drive. Do you see the distortion and the quasi-light in the rotating cylinders? That is an unmistakable indication for the authenticity of the photo. But why, you might ask, are there 4 cylinders? That's unusual. Even the interval seems to be incorrect. The coloring is very dark and the interior optical distortion is very noticeable. Presumably a reconstruction of the original system by your scientists. Since the alien species has just not given you any more information since the disagreement, they are rebuilding systems single-handedly without actually being able to understand what kinds of dangerous things they are doing here. This construction does not make the system better, only more unstable. Both of the forward cylinders are too close to each other. They will definitely flow into each other. The color shows me a powerful residual radiation. It was probably the case that high elements were used again as customary for the shifting. It is in any case very dangerous to be unshielded in the vicinity of the field. Did the person who took the photo display any kind of radiation and burn damage? Interesting.
Yeah, what I got hung on there at the end was she saying, since the alien species had just not given you any more information since the disagreement.
Right. But we kept charging on, trying to build stuff out of it.
What was this disagreement too? Just like, we just fell out?
Well, that's what they were talking about earlier, is that she was talking about earlier that we caught on to the fact that they were giving us bogus intelligence and we had a falling out with them.
Okay. That's the disagreement. Okay.
Yeah. And now we don't keep in contact anymore. And they're kind of pissed about it.
And we still have some of their tech.
Right, but they're no longer giving us tips, so now we're just trying a bunch of shit without having them to like check our work and like falsely lead us along.
Right.
So we're trying to figure it out, but according to her, we're doing dumb stuff in the process.
Gotta fail to succeed.
Yeah, and suggesting the burn damage is interesting because it seems to like line up with like weird cancers, diseases, Havana syndrome type weird stuff, especially like stuff that influencers or experiencers report all sorts of weird medical issues.
Yeah. And it's interesting the way she said it was just in my head. Oh, slip through. Forget about it.
It's all good. Question, I don't know. Where do these military UFOs come from? From the United States? Answer, yes, I think generally that's true. From the Western continent. Question, why then do they fly over thickly populated areas of Europe? This photo comes from Belgium. That doesn't make any sense. Can you explain? Why is why is it that only I am able to explain strange human deeds? It's possible that these are long-distance tests or tests with the electromagnetic camouflage systems. The old enemy of the American nation is on this side of the world, so why shouldn't they test here? At home, they've had enough time to have their ships crossing back and forth. Maybe they have aroused too much observation there. With one of these kinds of unstable field structures, as your photo indicates, I consider it somewhat improbable that the ship is capable of making a flight that length over the ocean. It's possible that there is a test station here on your continent. Unfortunately, I don't know anything about it. Question. Many readers of the first transcript have posted the question, how your original contact with EF came about. I already know the story from your narratives, but could you repeat it here once again for this volume and for the new transcript? Why don't
Probably skip through that, huh?
skip that? Yeah.
Because it's basically just retelling it.
Yeah. It's a bunch of... Here we go. If other people want to come in contact with your kind, do they have a chance to do so? Answer, generally not. We avoid contact with you and operate on the surface only in remote areas, and there we use mimicry techniques in case we should meet some people. That I'm talking with you now does not mean that others will follow my example. It goes without saying that you could try and find an entrance to my world and penetrate your way into there. However, that can sooner lead to unpleasant consequences for the infiltrator. You have next to no chances on the surface of recognizing us. You can't even contact us directly. We have to contact you, just as I did with EF. Those kinds of contacts, however, are not the rule, but very rare occurrences. Can you describe your subterranean homeland? I can attempt to do so, but I certainly will not tell you where this place is located. My homeland lies in one of our smaller underground settlements to the east of here. I'll give you some numbers so that you can make a better impression for yourself. Just a minute. I have to try and convert the measurements approximately into your units. It is a dome-shaped cavern at a distance of about 4,300 meters from the Earth's surface. The cavern was organized as a colony about 3,000 years ago. A major portion of the ceiling structure is artificially integrated into the rock, and the form was remodeled into almost elegantly proportioned and very flat dome with an oval ground plan. The diameter of the dome, according to your measures, is about 2.5 kilometers. The height of the dome at its highest point is about 220 meters. Underneath that highest point in every colony, there stands a special whitish-gray cylindrical building with a supporting column which holds the honeycomb net carrying structure of the dome. This build is the tallest, largest, and oldest of the entire dome, and for it is always situated at the first construction together with security of the ceiling. In the meantime, of course, there will be times when it was completed and reconditioned. That building has a very special name and a religious significance. We have only one of those columns. Larger colonies have more columns according to the construction of the ceiling. One of the main colonies in Inner Asia has an example of 9 of those kinds of supports. But that colony is also over 25 of your kilometers in size. The central building is generally a center of religion, but is also a center for climate control and a center for the behavior and the regulation of the lighting system.
What?
Yeah, they have to have a whole lighting system to have these like underground dome cities.
Yeah, I was just thinking of like Truman Show. Yeah.
Oh, right. We have at our location altogether 5 artificial light sources which generate your UV light and its warmth through gravitational sources. The air shafts and the light systems from the surface likewise run through these columns, and naturally they are very intensely controlled. By the way, we have 3 air shafts and 2 elevator systems there, and even a tunnel connection to the next main colony, which lies approximately 500 kilometers to the southeast. One elevator shaft leads to a cavern near the surface. The other leads to our depots for the ships. Do you remember the cylindrical ships? That is naturally concealed closer to the surface behind a rocky mountain face. So that's the ones that are flying in and out of the mountains.
Yeah.
So the reptilians have a base inside Shasta, maybe?
Maybe. Or Mountain motherfucking Haze.
Normally there are only 3 ships there. It's a small depot. The other buildings of the colony are, for the most part, concentrically ordered in oval circles around the main supporting column. And they're, without exception, much flatter, generally only between 3 and 20 meters tall. The shape of the buildings is round and dome-like. The color is even differentiated according to circle and distance from the main column. To the north of the column, there is an additional very large but very flat round building. This building interrupts the concentric system of the colony with its diameter of about 250 meters. It is the artificial sun zone, which is specifically illuminated, in which specifically illuminated corridors and rooms are housed. In these locations, very powerful UV light predominates, and they are used in order to warm our blood. There is even a medical dispensary and a meeting room located there. Beyond the outer ring of the colony, there are zones in which animals are kept. You know, we must consume flesh as nourishment. And the gardens in which plant nourishment and mushroom culture are cultivated. There is also hot and cold running water there from subterranean sources. The power station is located on the edge of the colony. The station is driven by fusion as its base and supplies the colony and the suns with energy. My group or family lives there, by the way, in the fourth ring of buildings out from the central support column. So much in a short time. To describe to you all the buildings and their tasks would be going too far. It is difficult to describe something like that to you, for it is a completely different set of surroundings and culture from what you are accustomed to in your life on the surface. You must really have to see it for yourself to be able to believe it. And then, almost done here. Ole K says, will I myself see it sometime? Who knows? Maybe. Time brings new opportunities. That's a good saying.
Yeah.
How many creatures of your kind live in this colony? Approximately 900. That is the end of the interview. Do you have any final message for the readers of the transcript? Yes, I am thoroughly surprised by the many comments to my words. Of course, I am naturally also disappointed about the religious portrayals of me as the enemy, which have been voiced and which have buried themselves deeply in your mind. You should learn to set yourselves apart from the old conditioning and not to stand quasi under the control of something or someone who has already been and gone for 5,000 years. You are, after all, free spirits. Those are my final words.
Boom. Mic drop.
I want to go there. That sounds cool.
Yeah, no shit.
Underground city, freaking giant underground dome.
Yeah. Just trying to figure that out. It's like 4,000 something kilometers. Say 4,500 kilometers.
Deep. That's how deep it was.
You know, getting close to 3,000 miles deep.
Yeah.
And then they said there was like 20 something or 50 or 500.
The dome at the highest point is 220 meters.
Okay.
Which in feet.
136 miles.
136 miles. Oh, dang. That's high ceilings.
Yeah, or super high ceilings.
No, 220 meters isn't.
Oh, meters.
Yeah, not kilometers.
Yeah.
That's 136 yards.
Yeah.
Or what's the conversion from meters to
it's
like
721
yards?
feet.
There you go. Anyway.
Which is still pretty high.
Yeah, that's high.
That's like 7.5 story building almost.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty high, especially being so wide. So it would be like I don't know, I guess, unless it's like more like a tent.
It would feel claustrophobic to like not be able to go out to the sky, you know, to the outdoors.
Not if you're born and raised there.
Yeah, true. But
to go down there would be very claustrophobic.
Yeah.
For sure. You would start to feel like weird.
Once you're in a dome that big, that probably helps relieve that, especially if they have it like well ventilated.
Getting
and, like,
there though.
Good lighting. Like it could be nice.
Sounds like it would be humid.
I wonder what the pressure is like though, that deep.
Oh, it's gotta affect you somehow.
Yeah. Are they able to like,
or unless the air pressure is able to relieve it.
Keep a surface pressure level that deep in the earth?
depends on their ventilation, maybe.
Yeah. Anyway.
And it sounded like they're like a break-off species too, like the idea that something bad was coming and they knew about it, and there was part of the species went down underground but had this technology.
Well, it sounds like back during the war, when the big catastrophe happened, like the end of the dinosaurs one, they survived underground, but that's when they started evolving, and it probably took them a bunch of time to get to their status, but they've been at their status for way longer than
they
we
stayed
have.
underground, which is the interesting thing. So those.
Well, it sounds like they didn't always, but yeah.
It is interesting.
Yeah. So what do you guys think of Lacerta? I mean, obviously, I can't just be like, okay, I believe it. Totally 100% true. Yeah. But
what do you think of the stories? What do you think of the idea? What's your thoughts on like
part of me thinks that a lot of the scientific ideas embedded in there show signs of like scientific understandings of the time. Like there was mention to like string theory and stuff, which has not made any progress in human science in a long time. Well, it's made a lot of progress without any answers. There's a million string theories now.
Yeah. It would be interesting to have like I mean, obviously this is just a post on Reddit, right?
No. It started a post in a different language on a website like years ago.
Okay.
Not just a post on Reddit.
Okay.
So, but still, like, you have no one, like, you can't physically tie it to like identifiable persons and places per se. The general concepts of the reverse engineering program and us trying to make tech based on it without fully understanding it sounds super believable to me, though.
For sure. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening. If you guys want to catch some of the audio and the video put together, check us out on YouTube or Rumble. We post our new episodes when they're coming out on Facebook and Instagram. If you want to get part of the conversation, comment, like, subscribe. That helps push our videos out and get more people in the conversation. And check us out. So
see you guys next week.
All right, later.
Adios.